Good morning, good people of the world. It's Friday the 27th of August in the year of 2021. Isn't it? I lose track of what year it is. Is that because I'm getting old, do you think? It might well be. It might well be. Sorry, I've been remiss for the last 2 days. It's been busy. And yeah, well, that's it really. It's been busy. Just one of those things, isn't it? This happens. I've been delivering the self care, productivity, resilience stuff to some good people Tuesday, Wednesday, and then yesterday, getting my head down with my dissertation, which is what I'm going to do today as well. And before I start, I thought I've got to check in because it's Friday, and we all know that Friday is the most important day of next week, don't we? So I thought, well, I've got to check in and make sure that you're all right. That would be essential, wouldn't it? So here I am checking in, and I've been thinking, I've been reflecting. It's important to reflect. I do a lot of reflecting. Maybe too much reflecting. I don't know. Maybe I ponder things too much. I don't know, rather than accepting how they are, or maybe that's just my inquisitive mind. I don't know. Anyway, I've been reading. I don't really know how if I'm pronouncing this right. Henry David Thoreau, Thoreau. He wrote a book called Walden, and hang on, light on, because eyesight's not good. It's it's he disappears off. I just know this because of Wikipedia. He disappears off for I think two and a half years into a kind of cabin and lives by his own means for this length of time. And I've literally just started the book. I'm literally on page 5, and I mean he doesn't start till page 3, so 2 pages in. And as ever with good books that are classics, um, it tells us something. And I read this. Um, he says, talking about the town that he's near, I see young men, my townsmen, whose misfortune it is to have inherited farms, houses, barns, cattle, and farming tools, for these are more easily acquired than they are got rid of. And I thought that's really interesting. These are more acquired than got rid of, because some people would think that to get acquire those things, kind of free, passed down, I suppose, would be a really good thing. But he says that actually it causes them, he's alluding to the fact it causes them stress, anxiety, whatever, because they've then got to do something with these things, haven't they? And it struck me from talking to people earlier in the week, who many of whom are working in in stressful environments because there's lots to do, person facing work, all the things that I often talk about, that when we move into the workplace, um, we inherit the culture, good and bad, problematic and helpful. We inherit the culture of the environment, don't we? Um, and it might not necessarily gel with what we thought it was going to be, or with our values, or the values that we thought the organization would seek to uphold. I mean, I'm talking here, I don't have to dance around this. I'm talking here about social work practice, and one of the things that I've been kind of pondering in terms of the dissertation is the disconnect sometimes between the person-facing, person-centered nature of the work that people are attracted to the profession for, and the reality of the nature of the systems, bureaucratic systems, paperwork, meetings, deadlines that it operates in. And it struck me that kind of maybe compromises people's well-being in some way, because there's a disconnect, isn't there? I think I mentioned this before. It's like an existential crisis between, well, what do I do? Who am I? Who is this person in this role? And it's not just social work, it can be any role. Who is this person in this role when I'm being demanded to almost contradictory things? are the people important or is the paperwork important? And the reality is that in the world we live in person facing professions, they end up both being important. Whether that's how it should be or not, I don't know. But it is. As things stand, both of those things are important. Um, anyway, it just got me thinking about the impact that has, and it got me thinking about the impact when I, and this is not necessarily about the two sessions that I've delivered earlier in the week. It's about what I see when I deliver these sessions, and I see a range of people, and I definitely see people so trapped in the system that they haven't even got the time to dip out of the system and think about what they could maybe do to improve how they operate in the system. Yes, I completely agree that maybe the system needs to change. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe we need a systemic change. And again, I'm not just talking about social work here, I'm talking about the workplace in general. I think the workplace environment now um, is hugely problematic. Less with more philosophy, all that kind of thing. Sorry, more with less, do more with less kind of thing is hugely problematic for people and organisations. And we're beholden to shareholder value, aren't we? The reason a lot of these productivity hacks come from that are suggest to people that might help in the person facing professions that I'm kind of most interested in, they all come from the business world. Because in the business world, productivity equals dollars and pounds, doesn't it? So organizations who are making stuff to sell us stuff, or producing services to sell us, they're focused on productivity massively, because if people aren't being productive, then they're not making money. That's the reality of it, isn't it? How do we translate those things into social work or nursing or teaching or whatever it happens to be? How do we do that? And I see some distinct groups of people when I deliver this stuff on self care and productivity and resilience. And I see people who, and this is not about me when I say this is not an egocentric. I see people who are almost kind of hanging on every word almost, they're kind of like, they're engrossed by it, and they're like, wow, this is really good stuff, this is really interesting, it's really interesting, and I wouldn't mind hearing more about this because I want to kind of try and change. See those people. Um, and then I see a group of people who are kind of I suppose ambivalent. It's like, yeah, this is interesting. It's an interesting diversion. It's something to listen to. There might be something in this. There might not be. And both those groups of people are really interesting groups because they're engaged in one way or another. They're engaged because they want change, or they're engaged because they think, well, this might be interesting for a morning. So that's good. That's good. And then there are other groups of people, and I'm minded when I think of these other groups of people. I'm minded of the book on habits. I'll post it in the chat afterwards. Can't remember what it's called, but it's um, a book on habits. And in that book, the author is saying that continue with the same habits, you get the same results. And if you're happy with the results or tolerant of the results, continue with the same habits. If you want to change, then you maybe need to change the habits. So that leads me into the other two groups, and this is not a criticism. I completely understand this separation into these groups and why different people are in different places. And one of the things that I always say about the productivity, resilience, self-care stuff that I talk about is you have to want to do it. And if you don't want to do it, that's fine. That's fine. You will continue doing the things the way you do them, and that might be fine, and you might be happy with that. I see people who aren't, but you might be happy with that. There are then two other groups of people. There are people who are desperate to listen, but can't bring themselves to because they've got so much else going on in their heads. I was using a juggling analogy earlier in the week, wasn't I? And one of the things when we're juggling all these balls in the air, when we've got so much going on that we're juggling, that all we will ever do is juggle unless we step back and have a look at why we're juggling and whether all the balls we're juggling are actually our balls to juggle, or they're necessary, or could we juggle in a more efficient way. So so it's all of those things that stepping back and taking a bird's eye view, and planning a strategy to manage the work as efficiently as possible, because people are effective. That's the thing. Because I can only talk about social work practice here because I don't know other person-facing areas. But in social work practice, people get stuff. You know, service users get services, and people get safeguarded, and people get what they need ultimately at the end of it. So people are being effective, but the question is, are they being efficient? And I don't ask that question so that if people are being so that people can be more efficient so they can do more. I ask that question, are people being efficient so they can actually cut themselves some slack to take a 5 minute break mid-morning, to take a lunch break, to leave it, 4:30 one day, to give themselves a bit of a longer evening. That's why I talk about being efficient. Not so you can be allocated 3 more cases. That's not the idea. Um, so there's this other group of people that trouble me even more, because at least with the group of people I've just described, they kind of want to change, they just can't find it in themselves to step back because they're so busy, so caught in that busy tunnel that they can't step back. But if some of the stuff that I tell them in those sessions catches them, then they might think about stepping back. But there's another group of people that I see occasionally, not very often, and again, I'm not talking about just this week, I'm talking about when I do this, are people who because they've become so ingrained in the system, and this is an interesting psychological twist, I suppose, because they've become so ingrained in the system, they appear to get something out of the toxicity of the system. And I worry about those people because they delight in saying how busy they are. They seem to get pleasure. It's very few, don't get me wrong here. I'm not, again, I emphasize, I'm not being critical. I say this because this group of people worry me, because we then normalise talking about the busyness. We normalise that to the point where we accept that it's just the way it is, and we shouldn't accept that it's just the way it is. So those people worry me, because they are so immersed in this troublesome, stressful system, and actually seem to take something psychologically positive from the drama of the environment and the stress and all that kind of thing. And those are the people I think, because I've just been looking at the data from the research that I've been doing around the psychology of social workers. Those are the people who I wonder whether is it those people that burn out. Because I'd hope that the people that want to change or are vaguely interested in changing might think about those kind of things. They might not do anything, they might. And then you've got a group of people who are so busy they can't find it in themselves to change, but at least if they're hearing the information, they might think about it. But what about these people who don't hear it because they're so immersed in that stress of that system that actually they've started to embrace it almost as a positive? Or those the people that burn out? And I don't know the answer to that. It's just, obviously I get to observe a lot of people when I do these presentations and observe how they respond to it. And that's just some observations, from what I do for a happy Friday. Anyway, there you are. That's an interesting change from kind of what I normally talk about, I suppose. Um, well, it's kind of what I normally talk about, isn't it? But it's a different angle, and it's just, I suppose I'm talking this through, and it's useful to talk it through in this situation because it's keeping me on my toes, knowing that it's out there, and thinking about it, because it's the troublesome nature of the environment of person-centered work and organisations that brought me to consider all these things in the first place. And those are just my thoughts as I kind of come to a bit of an end of a journey with the dissertation, but also come to a kind of a bit of a point where I've talked to a lot of people now about self-care and well-being and productivity, and resilience. So there you go. There you go. Anyway, there you have it. Food for thought. Food for thought. And there isn't an easy answer. So have good Fridays. Remember, if you're going to have a good weekend, spend a little bit of time today, this afternoon, maybe planning next week so you can leave behind as much as possible in the workplace. And we'll see you next week. Yeah, so have a good Friday and have a good weekend. And take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye now.